So anyway, let's talk about Moon Knight. Hello, welcome to R-Rated, where we haven't been here for a little while. It's been a few months since the last time I've sat down to do a little review. I'm wearing and in a void of as much white as I possibly can. I think that'll probably not be the case after today, but let's talk about the first episode of Moon Knight, the Goldfish Problem. I actually wound up looking up the phrase the Goldfish Problem just because the name sounded so much like it would be, some kind of like, oh, it's a reference to like a thing. It's like, no, it's just internal reference to the goldfish that he's got in the episode, whose name I forgot. Oh no, Gus, I think? Was it Gus? Oh, I didn't write it down. Oh no, I think it was Gus. Gus, it is Gus. Yes, I did write it down. This one's going to be a little bit looser than some of my reviews have been lately, just because it's the first episode, so it's a lot more of like setting up of the story and setting up of the world that we're in and kind of learning the characters a little bit. And that's kind of what most of this episode is about. It's really, a full block of setup, really. A lot of time spent with our main character, Stephen Grant. A little bit of time with our probably antagonist, Arthur Harrow. And a little bit of time with the voices in Stephen's head. But so let's we'll take a step back. There's like a few pieces in particular that I wanted to chat about. And then I'll give my final thoughts on the first episode. And now I know that by the time this goes up, which is, a few hours after I recorded, there's already been 4 episodes that have gone live, like of the show. I'll be catching up with that this week. I've only watched episode 1 as of the recording of this. I don't even know what the second episode is named or titled. And that'll be the case for each of these. I'm going to stop after each one. I'm going to review it, and then we'll be caught up by the end of the week. So the cold opening at the very beginning of this episode reminded me a lot of the opening to The Avengers from 2012. Maybe because it feels a little disconnected and disjointed from everything else. Like it's just there to explain a thing that they didn't really have like a good place to put it otherwise. It's a really slow kind of scene that essentially the point of it is that Arthur Harrow, whose name we find out later, we don't get it here, is just a devout follower of Emmett, I guess. And it actually reminded me a lot of fellow MCU actor Paul Bettany's character from, I think it was the Da Vinci Code. I'm pretty sure it was the Da Vinci Code and not Angels of Demons. The Da Vinci Code, who had like a I think it was a belt of thorns. Here we have Arthur Harrow breaking a glass, like a little like whiskey tumbler style glass, smashing it and then pouring the broken shards into a pair of like not moccasins. They're a little more open and wicker style shoes basically, which he wears with no socks, which means that everywhere he goes, he's in excruciating pain. So clearly the answer later on in this show is going to be that if Stephen needs to get away from Arthur, all he's got to do is run. I wonder if that opening scene was put on after the fact and, early testing of the series, needed a little extra something to kind of help explain Harrow's kind of character. I'm not really sure. It didn't feel all that necessary by the end of this episode. Like, you kind of get it by the time the episode's over. The Marvel Studios intro, the famous Marvel Studios crawl. I don't know how progressive it's been in terms of adding new characters to the crawl each time a new series or a new movie comes out. But I think the entire 2021 class of the MCU is in there. Shang-Chi is in the right near the end. The Eternals are in there. Black Widow is in there. There's no Spider-Man that I noticed anywhere in there, though that might be a stipulation by Sony, or it may also be a cheeky little reference to how things ended up in Spider-Man No Way Home. But yep, 2021 roster's in there, and we're off to the races with the first of 2022 with Moon Knight. So the first, real thing that we see of Stephen Grant is kind of his the morning half of his nightly sort of ritual. He wakes up, he feels like shit. There's a song that's like really on the nose that's talking about like every day when I wake up, like all this stuff. The song choice felt a little bit too blunt. There are ways to do incidental music that ties into the meaning of a scene or that kind of emphasizes some aspect of what you're doing, but I've never been a big fan of songs that just explain what's going on in a scene or tell you how you're supposed to feel about a scene. That's always been kind of like to me. And we see that he has like this moat of sand around his bed. That way he can see if he's been sleepwalking. He literally straps his leg to a post near his bed. He has a thing of blue masking tape that he or painter's tape that he has over the door to be able to see if anybody's opened his door, including himself. Essentially, what we're supposed to be seeing here and how Steven sees it himself is that he sleepwalks because he occasionally wakes up in really bizarre locations and doesn't know why. It's not a bad way to go about the discovery that this character winds up making, but it gets played out for so long in the episode that it does start to feel like, okay, yep, I think we all get it. We all understand what's going on here. Now, I think it might have been a writing choice in the assumption that like people were going to watch Moon Knight and have literally no clue what was going on. I myself don't really know anything about Moon Knight. So revelations from even in this first episode, I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty neat. I didn't know that. But by the time we were like 3 minutes into the episode, I had a pretty clear idea of what the basic idea here was. And maybe that's because there's also the meta awareness of the formula, right? Is if a character is doing a thing for their own protection or for XYZ reason, and they're still not totally sure why something's going on or whatever, then there's probably some other reason than what they think. And that turns out to be the case, as we'll get into. This doesn't really apply anywhere, but like he winds up eating a box of chocolates at one point, and he just gets shit all over his fucking face. 2 problems. Well, 3 actually. 1, how does one with little, like we're talking like truffle style, like Valentine's Day chocolate style chocolates, a box of chocolates. You literally have to roll it around on your face to get any of that on you. 2, it appears to be sprinkles that are on his face, which most chocolate box chocolates don't do sprinkles really. Like there might be a few that have like 5 or 6 little chocolate sprinkly things on one of them, but like these were like multicolor, like these were like cupcake sprinkles, which is weird to me. And then 3, he goes and he sprinkles some into his fucking aquarium. Like what? No wonder Gus very visibly dies or something. So, at one point in the episode, so Gus is a one-finned fish. It has one. Oh no, I don't remember what the name for like the side fin is. Dorsal, I think, is the back. I don't know what the other ones are called. But he has one side fin, and at one point after Steven blacks out and comes to and is back home, he notices that his fish now has 2 fins. And he goes to the aquarium and he's like all pissed off. He's like, is this normal? Is this what? And it's like, okay, so by this point it's very clear that something is going on when Steven's blacking out, and then therefore something happened to Gus, and this is not the same fish. The woman at the pet store even says that he was in yesterday, even though he doesn't remember doing that. So maybe Gus died from eating chocolate box sprinkles. I don't know. I don't know if we're actually going to go back and see what happened there. I'm half expecting that in episode 2 or 3, we're going to get a perhaps needlessly tedious recap of what was going on when Steven was not in control, when he was blacked out, I guess. Even though I really don't feel like we need it. I think the episode does a pretty good job of explaining anything that needs to be explained. But we'll see how that goes. So at night, apparently every night, Steven uses an app called Staying Awake. I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the first thing about... I used to sleepwalk when I was a kid. Not a ton. Like, I would sleepwalk to, like, the bathroom. That's about it. But it seems like the idea is that he's using this Staying Awake app, which suggests, like, you know, read a book, imagine yourself in the story, do a puzzle, like all of these things that keep your brain kind of active and doing things. And the idea is that you're supposed to do it for 5 hours, which, one, that is a long-ass time to wind down at night. Holy cow. 2, would staying awake for 5 hours past when you're, like, wanting to sleep not make your brain more, like, restless and listless and all of these things? Would that not make that problem, like, kind of worse? I maybe that is an actual thing. I don't know. And it would feel weird for this to be an included element of the show if it wasn't, you know, a possible, you know, thing to do there. I don't really know. But it definitely stood out as, like, that's a weird, especially because he starts it when it's dark. And, you know, I guess it would depend on what time of year it is, really, but it's like certain times of year it gets dark at like 8 or 9 p.m. Are you doing this until like at least 1 or 2 in the morning just to, like, is the idea that he's exhausting his body so much that he can't physically get up in his sleep? Like, I don't know. But yeah, so Stephen Grant is a gift shop clerk, I guess, attendee at the National Art Gallery, where they're currently in the middle of a big Egyptian exhibit, Ancient Egypt, the ancient gods of Egypt and all of that. Stephen obviously has, you know, a pretty strong passion for that. He at one point comments to his boss that the marketing team messed up on the like print materials for the exhibit because the Ennead only has 7, you know, people shown, 7 gods shown when it's supposed to have 9. Literally, Ennead, like, means 9, like a group of 9. Like, the ENNE portion of that is 9. I'm kind of curious if that, so one, obviously there's a lot in this series and a lot in the character that's to do with, like, Egyptian gods and all of that. And me personally, I was more of like a Greek mythology kid when I was growing up. Roman mythology was like number 2. Norse mythology was like a distant 3rd. And then Egyptian gods were like just past that. So I know very little about the Egyptian gods. But literally, I think everything I know about the Egyptian gods I got from The Mummy, which this show does so far have at least a little bit of a hint of to it, though that's probably just because the backdrop is Egyptian fair, you know, in that regard. But I'm curious if the Ennead's inclusion here, in addition to that, is also kind of meant as a parallel in some ways. Stephen's interest in the Ennead as a parallel to the world's interest in the Avengers, as a similar level of, like, these godly beings who are presumably there to protect and you know, save people and all of that. And interestingly, too, the Ennead had 2 people left out of that, whereas the Avengers, depending on how you look at it, either, you know, up until Infinity War, really, Hawkeye and Black Widow both kind of got left out a lot of, like, what people like thought. When you thought Avengers, it was either, you would think like, oh, it's the OG, the 6 of those, but, like, more often than not, people would be thinking of Iron Man, of the Hulk, of Captain America, of Thor, more than Hawkeye and Black Widow. Or similarly, it could even be a reference to Ant-Man and the Wasp, who in the comics were founding members of the Avengers, but in the MCU, Ant-Man doesn't even appear until after the second Avengers movie. In fact, he doesn't appear until after the movie that features Ultron, who in the comics was built by Hank Pym, not Tony Stark. I think they did a fine job of like adjusting that as need be, to be honest. But it could be a reference. It could be nothing at all. It just seemed like a fun little parallel there. The Night Guard looks like Dax Shepard. This has very little to do with anything, but if you don't know who Dax Shepard is, so it's Kristen Bell, who played Elle Bishop in Heroes. She played Veronica Mars, was like her big thing there. Her husband Dax Shepard is also an actor. You might know him more recently as co-starring with Michael Pena, who plays Louise in the Ant-Man movies, in the Chips movie from a couple of years back. That was Dax Shepard. I think did he also direct that movie? He might have also directed that movie. He's had a couple hits and a couple misses, but the security guard JB or whatever looked a little like Dax Shepard. So most of this episode does focus on kind of three things. One is, information about these Egyptian gods, because elements of that do keep kind of coming up here and there. Information about Stephen Grant and what's going on with him, and information about Arthur Harrow. Not a lot that we get out of him, but we get enough to kind of establish him as this imposing and scary sort of dude. He is a very weird guy. Like I said before, he's this sort of priest of Emmet, who is another Egyptian god. And he appears to know about voices in Stephen's head. This is a thing that I'll talk about in a sec, but he seems to be aware of stuff that's going on that I think the idea is that it seems to suggest pretty strongly that he had an encounter with Stephen during one of his blackouts when what was going on then was going on. Stephen winds up blacking out and waking up in, I think, Switzerland. Was it Switzerland? I think it was Switzerland. Yes, Switzerland. I remember my first comment when I wrote stuff down was like, this looks like a Bavarian village, which I guess was pretty damn close. He was in the Alps, which I guess could be. Are the Alps entirely in Switzerland? No, because there's like the French Alps and stuff too, aren't there? Like it's a couple countries. Anyway, he winds up introducing himself to Arthur Harrow to be like, no, I'm just a gift shop guy. I don't know what's going on here. And they have this fun thing where he discovers in his jacket he has this golden scarab beetle, like a golden figurine, I guess, of a scarab beetle. And Harrow kind of demands that he gives it back, and he keeps trying to, he hands it out, and then whoop, his fingers lock over it, and he's just kind of like, nope, okay, sorry, I don't know what's going on, I can't, and he finally gets it out, and then he flings it behind, holds it behind him, and he's just like, I'm not doing this, I don't know what's going on, and then starts walking, but his body is not entirely his own, and it was kind of a fun scene, and then when eventually he is forced to give it up, he blacks out for a moment and wakes up, and he's holding the scarab beetle just completely fucking covered in blood. And it's like, whoa, okay, all right, that got a little extreme there. All right. They run into each other again later, and I guess a big thing for Harrow is he has this set of scales as a tattoo on his, mid forearm kind of area. And he takes someone's hands, and the scales judge the person that he's holding on to. If the scales balance one way, then congratulations, you're a good person. If they balance the other way, then you're a bad person, or you're going to do something bad and you just fall over dead. Unclear exactly what this is. Unclear if it's a conscious thing or a subconscious thing. Unclear if it's intentional or unintentional. Hard to say. It's still early days. But it's entirely possible too that Arthur Harrow has his own little passenger in his mind that's doing some things. Who knows? But when he holds Stephen Grant's hands, we see the scales, and then the camera kind of pulls away, and he looks at him and says, "There's chaos in you." And then he runs off, and Arthur Harrow's like, "No, leave him, let him go." And I'm assuming the idea is that the scales are just going nuts and not settling in any given direction. Though it's weird. Stephen runs away, and then 10 minutes later encounters this big scary dog thing. I was wondering at first, is this supposed to be Anubis or something? But he gets away, and then rather, sorry, I'm mixing some things up. He gets away and then goes back to work in the gift shop, and he's doing inventory stuff, and then lights are going out, but he hears a dog, goes to follow the dog. The dog turns out to be this weird dog creature man thing, and then Arthur Harrow gets on the PA system to like be like, give me the scarab beetle or whatever. It's like, wait, so both of you have just been hanging around for like 5 hours now? What's going on here? It was very weird. But basically, Steven has a couple passengers. He has someone named Mark. I don't think we got the last name yet, but it's Marc Spector, who is kind of the voice in Steven's head right now, who takes control of Steven to do things, presumably to kill Harrow's goons earlier on, to fight and I guess kill the like dog beast thing, and get him to Switzerland, I guess. Also asked out a woman on a date, which seems a little bit... It's interesting because it's kind of funny, but it's also like, why does Mark give a shit enough to be doing that in the middle of whatever else he's doing? So I don't know what that's all about, but he has Mark commanding him to do stuff sometimes in his head, but that's a little bit more rare, and he usually sees Mark in this show's favorite thing, which is infinity mirror shots. There is an elevator shot at one point where it's a reflective elevator, and you get that nice infinity mirror shot of just a bunch of Stevens all, back to back. And then there's another one in the bathroom of the museum at the end where there's like mirrors on both sides, and he kind of turns and there's like a whole bunch of reflections except for one, and it's Mark trying to tell him what to do. And then at one point he looks and there's no reflections except for one reflection of Mark, and just really interesting shit. Really well shot, fun stuff with the mirrors. And I'm curious to see where that stuff goes as he willingly gives himself over to Mark's control at the end of the episode. You see the white bandages and things kind of form over him, and he becomes Moon Knight to fight this Anubis-y looking thing. The way that they present it up until that last point is that when stressful things are happening to him, he'll just kind of like seize up a little bit, and the video will kind of do like cutting in and out, and then and like he's just back, like he snaps in at the end of it, and it does a really cool job of like the cuts are matched together really nicely, so it looks like you're in the exact same spot, and usually you are, and just like a bunch of stuff is different around Steven. So like it's a really potent kind of like bang, oh, stuff has changed. Get acclimated quick. You got to figure out what's going on. I thought that was kind of cool. It's weird to me that Steven's phone apparently doesn't have a date on it. You'll never be able to see this on here, but my phone has the time and the date. And I guess his phone doesn't have the date on it, because at one point he calls the woman that he was going to go out on a date with the following night, and she tells him that was 2 days ago, and he's like, "What? But it's Friday." And she's like, "It's Sunday, idiot." It's like, how do you not? You're looking at your goddamn smartphone. This will be there. Also, if it's Friday, if you think it's Friday, then did you go to work? Like, what? There's a lot of like, maybe he just didn't have work on Friday. I don't know. There's a lot of confusing stuff with that. That was kind of a weird, like, let's see. But yeah, apparently Arthur Harrow is aware of the voices in Steven's head. Oh, I didn't even there's another voice that gets named in the credits, but doesn't get named in the episode itself, which is Khonshu, voiced by F. Murray Abraham, who is one of those guys whose face you will immediately recognize if you see it. I have never actually watched Amadeus, but he was Salieri in Amadeus, and that's how I know him best, is he's just Salieri. And it's just, he's got this like really distinct voice coming through out of nowhere. Just be like, "Silence, worm." And I was like, whoa, oh God. Okay, that's a fun thing to kind of have in there. But I guess Arthur Harrow is aware of these, either because A, maybe he also has a voice in his head, maybe one that is or is claiming to be Emmett, or he's aware of / familiar with Mark in his Moon Knight sort of situation, and is familiar with enough stuff there to know what's going on with that. The credits were kind of neat. I'm curious if the credits are going to change much between episodes. There's a really great shot with Oscar Isaac, who plays the main character, Steven/Mark. It's his head, and then his face is kind of popped off, but then there's 3 copies of his face, which is nice for kind of the Steven and Mark, and I guess Khonshu as well. One of the first shots in there is hieroglyphs, and you can kind of tell as the camera does like a little pull focus that it's set on the moon, a very like moon surface there. And then the introduction of F. Murray Abraham as Khonshu was kind of neat there too. All in all, it's an okay episode. The pace is a little bit slow. It felt like it took a little too long to get moving. It did a good job of establishing Steven as this really like put upon kind of spineless guy, especially in comparison to Mark, who's a much more like determined and like legit sort of dude. I'll be very curious to see what the deal with that is, because I'm curious, are both of them people? Did something put them together? Is one of these personalities, essentially just a thing that spawned out of nowhere? Is Steven the invented personality? I don't know. We'll see. I would give this episode a 6 out of 10. It was good. I wouldn't say it was great. I'm looking forward to where the rest of this show is going from here. I'm definitely invested. Because on the one hand, it's interesting. We're getting so far it feels like a pseudo origin story where from Steven's perspective, this is him learning about Moon Knight, but Moon Knight appears to already be well in action, given by the fact that Steven's got this like nightly ritual that he does because he's been sleepwalking so much that he's got to fix that. But yeah, I'll be very curious to see where things go from here. There's also the question of so what does he care about the museum as much when it's not doing the Egypt exhibit, or is this just a perfect little bit of happenstance that these are all lined up that way? I don't know. But yeah, I think it was pretty cool. I can't really comment much on Moon Knight as a character or his costume just yet, because we literally only see him at the very, very end. I don't know if there was anything else that I really wanted to comment on before we close this up. I think Khonshu's supposed to be the plague doctor looking spooky bird ghost that follows him around in a couple spots. He's visible and then he's gone. It's weird. There's a lot of moments of Steven seeing something and then not seeing it. He has a hidden Motorola Razr. I would recognize that flip phone anywhere. And someone named Layla is calling, thinking Mark was dead, and has been calling and texting for months. So that would probably be the thing that we're actually going to get like a flashbacky style, pre-establishment thing there, like learning who Layla is, learning how the last couple months led up to this or something. But yeah, I think that's, shout out to the Avatar joke that they pull off in the museum when Arthur Harrow finds Steven. I forget if he refers to himself as an avatar, if he refers to Steven as an avatar, and Steven jokes about oh yeah, the Blue People, it's a great movie, which is a cute little joke, both in the fact that Disney now owns Avatar, and also there's in the fan bases, there can be some animosity specifically between the MCU and Avatar because of Avatar and Endgame's kind of back and forth on the highest grossing film position, I guess. But then he also is talking about, do you mean like the anime, the animated show? And Harrow's just like, shut up, stop talking. Which is a doubly fun one because Avatar: The Last Airbender is a Nickelodeon property, so it's a fun little jab. Not even a jab, a fun little acknowledgement, I guess, from Disney and Nickelodeon. But that's all I've got. I'm sure I'll have more interesting things to say as the show actually starts moving now that we've got some things set in motion. This was definitely the setting the ground rules kind of episode. I rated this the same as the opening to What If, which had a similar set the ground rules kind of vibe. I set it a little bit higher than Falcon and the Winter Soldier's opening episode, just because that one like really felt like it was just like, it felt more like an epilogue to what was happening before than an introduction to the new stuff. And the other 3 shows are all like one step higher, just because I think they did a little bit better job in terms of pacing and starting things off. So I think that's what's getting us the 6 out of 10 here. So thank you guys very much. I'll see you tomorrow for the second episode of Moon Knight. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the first episode, what you think of the show so far, and we'll have to see how things go from there. So have a good one. Catch you tomorrow. Bye.